What's good, you guys? James here again. Deck profile for you guys to showcase throughout the course of the whole entire 10 Pi Dragon ladder, as I call it, because now that the new promotional pack is released, it's basically 10 Pi Dragon ladder season throughout this time around. But I decided not to go along with the overhyped deck, just like everyone else. And I decided to myself, you know what? Let's play something super different, super control, and we are going to play something that deals with the top meta decks, best decks, and soon to be the king of top tables. And that deck of choice in terms of countering those top tables would be Evil Eye. Evil Eye is a series of control style decks that revolves around the equipped Evil Eye monster in order for you to utilize their effects. 4 of them, which being Surzeal, Medusa, Gorgon the Link 2, and Zerziel the Link 3, have their own usages of effects and effects that trade off from the first effect. But with that being said, few things in mind. The dual triangle. In terms of the voting polls, we already got about a little time left over in terms of the event to start at the time recording that this video is getting posted. So share this video, spread the word, and be sure to take some time about the votes for what 3 decks to take, because we got so much time on our hands. And more importantly, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. You guys know the good stuff. So first things first on the deck list: 3 Surzeal, 2 Medusa. That's that for those humanoid fiends. So they both do something when it comes to summoning, so depends on what the rest of the hand is looking like in a 5-card open hand. If the opponent doesn't know what type of choke point to hit, you're basically going to get punished on your end. And even if the opponent doesn't know how to hand trap correctly, you're basically in a pretty good spot because you have ways to generate so much advantage. Now, Surzeal, on the other hand, 80 to 85% of the time, even 90 I should say, with the equipped Evil Eye of Selene on board, is usually like one of the most toughest monsters to deal with. So it's either A, they're going to play incorrectly in terms of how to deal with Surzeal with the equipped Selene, or B, they're going to try their hardest to get rid of the equipped spell so that they can deal with an even more buffed up Surzeal or even a buffed up Medusa in any shape or form. So basically, they're just going to essentially waste cards in order to deal with the equip spell. And even if they were to waste it, we can always recycle them back. So they're basically going to get punished on their end. 2 of each familiars, extenders. 2 Kato Blepas, protects your Evil Eye spell trap only once. 2 Basilius, your extender, that foolishes spell traps of Evil Eyes. And then 2 Basiltris, this is your extender that quick links an Evil Eye link monster. Basically, Basiltris is IP Masquerena of the archetype. And as you guys noticed on the monster lineup, no monster hand traps, because throughout the course of the 10 Pi Dragon ladder, a lot of people thinking cards such as Droll Bird, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring are the legitimate choke points to stop Sangan summoning. That is true, But the problem is, you are still losing to talents and thrust. And honestly, I chose not to play monster hand traps, so that way I am not trying to get thrusted or talents. And don't get me wrong, aside from Basilatris, this is literally the most critical way of not having an evil eye on the field. So the only time you are forced to use Basilatris effect is in a situation is where if you have the equipped monster being ready to go someplace else, that non-target removal in any way, use the Basilatris so that you are able to keep on extending and have a legal target on the field. So that way you don't have to worry about your opponents putting you on pressure. But otherwise, your monsters, in terms of the deck building process, still loses to talents and thrust. That's why I chose not to play monster hand traps. For the traps, which is a small amount, 2 imperms, not 3, couldn't make space for it. 1 solemn judgment, 1 solemn strike. Realistically, when it comes to the 2 solemn cards, you definitely do not want to get your life points shorted off from solemn strike, because in terms of less than 1500 life points, you are essentially making your solemn strike completely dead, and this also completely kills you in the game in terms of your Evil Eye of Selene, in terms of spilling blood, so that way your Evil Eye monster gets buffed up. And by spilling blood, I mean life points, because you know, spooky season. So you basically want to strike down first and then you judgment as much as you can. Depends on the situation of what your opponent does in terms of having board breakers in general. So 1 of each solemn, and then the 3 Evil Eye traps. Defeat compulses 1 monster, but if Evil Eye of Selene is there, you can compulse 2 monsters. And then the Retribution, spell trap negate, and if Evil Eye of Selene exists, don't ever try to stop me. And then Mesmerism is basically Evil Eye's snatch steal. Most of the time when it comes to Mesmerism, which doesn't come up that often, you basically want to use this on Link monsters that have lower attack than Evil Eye monsters. So that way you are guaranteed snatch stealing their monsters, and in conjunction with Basilatris, you basically get the huge trade-off for even more value with snatch stealing their monster and linking them off to make Gorgon or Zerziel in a grind game state, which is absolutely nice. For the spell lineup, 3 Awakening. Now, I know what most be thinking, why 3 Awakening even though the card is a very hard once per turn? Just like literally every Evil Eye spell trap that says it on the text about hard once per turn on the Evil Eye spell traps. The idea about Evil Eye Awakening, to be specific, is that 1 for extending, obviously, assuming that if you never use the effect of Kato Blepas or Basilatris, you're basically in a pretty good spot. So that way, you never have to worry about those 2 monsters being banished, for starters. And then second of all, Evil Eye of Selene exists. You can actually get one of them out of your deck to your field in case if you don't see either any of these 2 from your hand, in which you literally do not want to open ever. And then also, this is usually part of the discard fodder off from Gorgonio or banish in terms of Selene fodder, so that way you are always keeping up with the advantage. Re-emergence, just one. The generating one token is nice, but if Celine exists, you generate 2 tokens, which is even nicer. And the 2 tokens in the situation, that can come up in terms of having one of the most weird / awkward / terrible hands to some degree. Also, if you don't have anything else to keep yourself going in terms of offensive maneuvers, you can always go into one of the link 2s that'll help you float. 3 Unleashed, this card says guarantees sending to 1 monster, 1 spell trap of the Evil Eye cards as part of the cost. It makes it so that costs in general cannot be negated, which also means you're going to get huge value even if your opponents tend to Ash Blossom the Unleashed. So stop Ash Blossoming the Unleashed, because you're going to get even more punishable, whether if I have the 1-of talents or the 1-of call by in my open hands, so that way that's already twice the punishment that you are receiving. The 1 Prosperity, this can conflict with the 1-of repose in terms of the draw one, which is really annoying between the 2, but at the same time it's where if you are able to keep things consistent, flowing, and energetic, then it really gets going. And the 1 repose, as I mentioned earlier, aside from the draw one, which is nice, and assuming that if you never used Prosperity, obviously, and again, these 2 conflicts between the searching and the draw one, because the Prosperity side effect is the no draw policy, which depends on how the game is going. And then the reposes battling trick, on the other hand, is that a lot of times in which players have something that, in terms of having monsters that's untargetable or couldn't be killed by card effects, I could just have repose banishing the battling monster of my opponents. And what's also really good is that I legitimately understand that some or most Evil Eye lists in general don't play the repose, but this card is super strong in the mirror, because during testing, when I picked up this deck, I went up against 2 of the Evil Eye mentors. Shoutouts to you. If you know, you know. But otherwise, during testing with that repose in a mirror match, the repose was how I was able to get rid of the equipped Evil Eye monster of my opponents. And it makes it so that if they don't have ways to put stuff back off from killing the repose, then you're basically in a commanding position, which is nice. 3 the field spell, Pareidolia, basically get you an Evil Eye, extra consistent as it is, and then the secret effect of opponent taking the battle damage comes up, because in case if for some reason you cannot close out a game, Pareidolia can help you get it in check, as long as you have Celine exist in your back row. And speaking of Celine, 2 of each, your win condition card, 2 Evil Eye of Celine, and then 2 Evil Eye of Gorgonio, who also counts as Celine while it's on the spell and trap zone, which is nice. And then 1 confrontation. This was a surefire way to stop Sangen summoning of all times. Between this and the 1 copy of Blizzard, makes it so that you are able to resolve the summoning without effect, because it's Tenpai Dragon ladder season. So if you want to stop Sangen summoning, play cards to stop Sangen summoning, because you don't want your opponent's fire dragons become unaffected throughout main phase 1. So most cases, cards such as Evil Eye Confrontation and the one Blizzard, what you want to do is you rather wait until the activation of the card sticks, like that's no problem. And what you want to do is the moment they activate the effect to search out a fire dragon, shotgun the confrontation or the blizzard, and it makes it so that you are able to resolve without effect. Otherwise, if you expect to know about having Sangan summoning ready to go in your personal turn 1 position after setting up your board, Retribution the Sangan summoning and or board breakers, so that way you do not have to worry about dealing with the biggest answers in terms of ways to stop Sangan summoning. So like I said from before, you got Retribution, Solemn Judgment, Blizzard, and Confrontation. That's literally 4 cards in terms of ways to stop Sangan summoning, and those are spells / traps to stop in terms of negates. And you are also avoiding talents and thrusts, because according to talents and thrusts, which you guys already know about, it has to deal with monster effects, so you're not trying to get punished off from that. And then the rest of the non-engine is 1 Called by the Grave and 2 Forbidden Chalice. Extra deck, Witch's Apprentice and the Dark Charmer and Gloomy. These 2 depends on how I usually feel about the 6th target of Prosperity. Depends on how the matchup plays out. Well, technically, when it comes to Prosperity in terms of going for 3 or going for 6, if it ends up resolved, we are always walking in terms of consistency. So when it comes to the 6th target in terms of the Prosperity, is usually the 5xz, and then your 6th target, depends on the situation, is what your opponent expects to play out. So Witches, for decks that are versus dark, you literally do not want to help out your opponent in terms of boosting the dark monsters. And then dark, in terms of Prosperity, dark is only for if you're not playing against a dark deck. And then Cerberus, in terms of the 6th target of Prosperity, that is for versus Yubel, because Cerberus in general is really bad for Yubel because you are helping them getting the effects off Yubel monsters in terms of the swarming, same with the field spell to recur more monsters. But otherwise, Witch and Dark, these are the only 2 spellcasters in terms of to play generically in terms of darks. But when it comes to re-emergence on the restrictions of fiends only, 13 fiends in my extra deck. So the 5xz monsters, Music Rhythm, Tempo, Melody, Humming, and DDD Stone King Darius. Stone King Darius can clutch out sometimes on the battle immunity and burn your opponent 500. Also, outside that couldn't be targeted by any means, which is insane. Music Rhythm is only meant for getting over bigger monsters, even though they are unaffected by everything else, which is absolutely nice. Tempo, this card is absolutely crazy because if you are playing against any XZ deck in general, stripping away the XZ materials that your opponent has one by one makes it so that they are basically being caught off guard and they shouldn't be able to do too much. But most cases, decks such as Infinite Tracks and Trains, Raid Raptors, Phantom Pearlies, and many more XZ decks, you're all about catching them off guard. And then Melody, this card steals games because attacking twice as well as getting the big numbers up all from the Gorgonio boost in terms of life point difference, that literally puts your opponent on pressure mode. And then humming, this card did not come up at all, but it is a surefire prosperity target to some degree. And then speaking of the nightmares as mentioned earlier, Cerberus, Phoenix, the nightmares can be really crucial. Phoenix is really good, and then Cerberus, to me personally, Cerberus can be okay / not so good because most decks nowadays tend to do something in terms of having graveyard effects when being destroyed. So Cerberus, to me, is going to be a future good use to my own liking. And then Beat Cop, in conjunction with the Kato Blepas, you are protecting your equipped Evil Eye as well as your other Evil Eye spells and traps, whether if it's Selene, Gorgonio, and or Repose. In terms of having a patrol counter, you're basically keeping your cards alive and well. And then Mudcracker, Unchained Abomination, Underworld Goddess, Mudcracker for the sake of the saving grace, and then Abomination, only use this against decks that doesn't rely too much on the destruction, and then Goddess, for some reason, obviously a fiend, unaudible monster to some degree. And then the last two extra deck cards that spells out the words guaranteed death. These two are going to utilize their effects while hooked up with Evil Eye of Selene, which is absolutely crazy to some degree. And with that being said, this has been James Polk on the unique showcasing of Evil Eye for the end of season profile, which I am going to post right away because the event is coming up at the time this video is being recorded and posted and all. But I decided to give it a break for now, and then of course more replays of Evil Eye will come up, whether if it's before or after the deck list. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and if you haven't already, smash the notification bell to keep yourself constantly updated, and we'll catch you guys next time.